Bang, bang, bang. The terrible pounding ripped through the stormy night and yanked me straight out of sleep. My heart kicked against my ribs as I shot upright in bed. The red digits on the clock glared 1:30 a.m. More pounding, heavy, desperate, not knocking. Someone was throwing their whole weight at our front door. "Open the door, Carter!" a hoarse male voice bellowed, riding over the howl of the wind. "Your wife is under arrest." For a heartbeat, I thought I'd misheard. My wife. Under arrest? By whom? We lived on a quiet cul-de-sac at Lake Ridge. Nobody came to your door in the middle of a storm shouting that. I stumbled out of bed, shoved my feet into slippers, and hurried down the stairs. Rain hissed against the porch roof. The hallway smelled of damp wood and cold air seeping in around the doorframe. Through the peephole I saw Travis Cole, our brand new HOA president. His big frame hunched in the rain, face flushed and angry red under the porch light. Behind him loomed 3 other men in dark jackets with HOA enforcement stenciled across their backs in crooked white letters. Each carried a long flashlight like a club, and one had what looked uncomfortably close to a steel baton. These weren't cops. These were neighborhood bullies dressed up like authority. A voice floated down the stairwell behind me, still thick with sleep. "Ethan, what's going on?" I turned toward the woman I'd shared my life with for 8 years, Maya Carter. To me, she'd always been the soft-spoken clerk from the county courthouse, the woman who brewed a perfect medium roast coffee every morning and read mystery paperbacks under the amber lamplight at night. Our life had been slow, predictable, even cozy, until Travis Cole moved in 6 months ago and started turning our HOA into his own petty kingdom. He'd harassed us over the shade of our fence paint, the lavender pots by the steps, even the angle of our mailbox. But tonight he'd crossed a line I couldn't make sense of. I kept my voice low. "It's Travis, and a few of his guys. They're saying you're under arrest." "Under arrest?" Maya repeated, and for just a second I thought I heard the tiniest spark of amusement in her voice. No fear at all, just a dry, almost weary disbelief. Another round of pounding rattled the door on its hinges. "Carter, open this door before we break it down. We got a gas leak report. Step aside." Gas leak? That was a new twist. My palms were sweating against the cold brass doorknob. 4 grown men outside in the dark, claiming there was danger inside the house. How was I supposed to fight that? "Maya, call the cops," I hissed over my shoulder. "Right now." But she shook her head slowly, eyes narrowing in a way I'd never seen before. There was a sharp glint there, cool, professional, so out of place on the gentle face I woke up next to every morning. "That won't be necessary," she said, her voice calm, almost too calm. "Let me handle this." She walked past me, steady as if this were an ordinary evening chore. She zipped up the gray jacket she'd thrown over her pajamas, then slipped her hand to her hip, where I saw the outline of something I had never noticed in our entire marriage. Maya drew out a police-issue handheld radio, thumbed the button, and brought it to her mouth. Her tone dropped into something firm. Clipped, unmistakably official. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff 225 Sierra. Confirm my ID. I've got 4 armed impersonators at my residence." A burst of static crackled from the speaker, followed by a woman's steady voice. "Copy that. 225 Sierra. Units en route. Hold your position, Sheriff." I swear the temperature in the hallway seemed to plummet. The men outside heard every word through the thin door, saw the radio glowing in her hand. Their flashlights wavered. Even Travis took a single instinctive step back. Maya lowered the radio, but didn't clip it away. She fixed her eyes on the man at our door and spoke through the wood, each syllable sharp as glass. "You might want to step off my porch before backup arrives." Thunder cracked somewhere over the lake. Rain blew sideways across the porch, rattling the wind chimes. For a long second, nobody moved. That was the night I learned the woman I thought was a quiet courthouse clerk was in fact the county sheriff of Cedar Ridge, and that the so-called HOA enforcers at my door had just made the worst mistake of their lives. The men outside didn't wait for the sirens. By the time a pair of county cruisers turned onto our street 10 minutes later, Travis Cole and his 3 enforcers had already melted into the stormy dark, like raccoons scattering when the porch light comes on. 2 uniformed deputies knocked us and took our statements. Maya kept her answers clipped and professional. I noticed the way the younger deputy's eyebrows shot up when he realized who she really was. Sheriff Maya Carter, badge number 200-25 Sierra, reporting an incident at her own home. He didn't even try to hide his unease. Nobody expected to find the county sheriff in pajama pants behind a trembling front door at 2 a.m. When they left, the house fell quiet again, except for the ticking of the kitchen clock and the distant patter of rain. I thought that was the end of the drama for the night. I couldn't have been more wrong. I tried to go back to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Downstairs, the porch light kept flickering with the wind. I made coffee I didn't really want and stood by the window, staring out at the cul-de-sac, glistening under the street lamp. Around 3 a.m., Maya came back down, already showered and dressed in her field jacket, duty belt slung low on her hip. She was scrolling through her phone, frowning at something only she could see. "The dashcam footage from the patrol car that responded tonight," she said quietly. "Never uploaded. The server log shows a blank spot where our call should be." "A glitch?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Not unless glitches know how to erase time-stamped video on purpose. She set the phone face down on the counter. "And the camera at our own front door. Last 30 minutes of footage are gone too." I felt a slow chill crawl up my spine. We hadn't even told the HOA we had a camera doorbell. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the neighborhood washed clean but uneasy. Travis's truck was gone from his driveway. The rest of the street looked normal, mothers loading kids for school, sprinklers clicking on across neat lawns, but I couldn't shake the sense that we were being watched. Maya sat at the dining room table with her laptop open, lips pressed thin. She pulled up the Sheriff's Department incident report system, typed in her credentials, and clicked through half a dozen menus. Every record of the midnight call was missing. No log entry, no dispatch audio, no report number. It was as if the call had never happened. "Somebody's inside the network," she muttered. "This isn't just Travis throwing his weight around. Someone with access wiped the evidence within an hour. Who would do that? Why?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at me across the table, steady, unreadable, like she was measuring whether to let me in on something heavier than I was ready to hear. Late that morning, she drove into town to talk to her undersheriff in person. I stayed behind, trying to work from home, but jumping every time the mailbox creaked or a car slowed on the street. When Maya returned near noon, she looked more tired than when she'd left. "No luck," she said. "Dispatch swears the call log was there at 3, gone by 6. It is blaming a corrupted backup, but that's not how this kind of corruption works." "So, what now?" "Now," she said, taking off her jacket and hanging it on the chair back, "we find out who's protecting Travis Cole, because he's not clever enough to pull this off alone." Her calm frightened me more than the pounding on the door had. She wasn't angry or panicked, she was calculating. That evening we tried to act normal. We grilled chicken, waved at neighbors who passed by, pretended not to notice the black SUV parked 2 houses down that had never been on our street before. Maya claimed it was probably a contractor's car. I wasn't so sure. Just after sunset, she came to sit beside me on the porch swing. The air smelled of wet pine and cooling asphalt. She rested one hand on my knee, the other wrapped loosely around a mug of tea. "Ethan," she said softly, eyes fixed on the horizon where the lake reflected the last orange glow, "I didn't tell you everything about why we moved here. Travis isn't the real problem. There's someone behind him. And if I'm right, tonight was only a warning." I wanted to ask more, but the look in her eyes stopped me. Something colder than fear, something that said she'd been living with a bigger secret for a long time. The storm was gone, the sky finally clearing, yet I had the unsettling feeling that the real weather, the dangerous kind, was just beginning to roll in. Sure. I'd started sleeping with my phone on the nightstand. Flashlight app ready. Ever since the night Maya froze Travis on our porch, the street had felt like a coiled spring. It snapped at 2:04 a.m. the very next night. First came a hard click somewhere down the block. Then every light on our cul-de-sac died at once. The hall nightlight went black. The fridge hummed to silence. Even the yard timer quit with a little hiss clunk. "Not a transformer," Maya said, already on her feet. Somebody pulled the curb breaker. Through the curtain I counted shapes. 3, no, 4, gliding along the hedge line. No talking. No porch banter this time, just intent. "Same crew?" I whispered. "Same crew," she said, calm as a metronome. "And they think darkness is cover." She slipped her phone off the nightstand, swiped twice, and held it to her shoulder. 911 on speaker, muted our side. The operator's voice came soft and steady. 911, what's your emergency? Maya let the line stay open. Dispatch would record everything they could hear. She handed me the small LED light. Stay behind my shoulder. If they step up, keep the beam on hands, not faces. We moved downstairs. The house felt like a lung holding its breath. Bang, bang, bang. The door jumped in its frame. No shouted gas leak this time, just the scrape of metal on the knob, practiced and patient. Maya didn't reach for the light switch. With the power out, it was useless anyway. Instead, she thumbed her tactical flashlight to a low-intensity beam, angled down so it wouldn't backsplash off the glass, and lifted her voice, firm, even, unhurried. Travis Cole, you're trespassing on private property. This line to 911 is open and recording. Step off my porch and return to the street now. A beat of rain on the eaves, a muffled curse from the other side. The metal tool paused, then scratched again. Maya took one quiet step closer to the door. Here's what happens next, Travis. You keep working that lock, I open this door with cuffs, and we add burglary to your troubles. You back away, we call this night a warning. 10 seconds. Silence. I could feel, more than hear, the men shifting their weight on the boards. She didn't wait for them to decide. She hit the panic button on the car fob in her pocket. Outside, our sedan exploded into headlights and horn, a savage blast that punched holes in the quiet and strobing beams that cut across the porch from the driveway, all of it running on the car's own battery. Not house power, not theirs to kill. The men flinched. Through the peephole I caught a jitter of movement. Gloves, a dark jacket, a flash of a cheap Enforce stencil, then a hand yanked the tool away from our lock. Maya kept her voice level, riding the horn. 9, 8, 7, back it up, a low voice hissed from the steps. Boots thudded, one scuffed hard on the riser, an angry, clumsy sound, and then they were off the porch, moving fast toward the corner. The horn blared on. Headlights swept the hedges like search beams. Tires scrabbled on gravel. A truck door slammed. Then the taillights, red dots, shrinking and gone. Maya clicked the fob again. Silence rushed back into the house like a tide. You didn't draw, I said, breath finally catching up to me. They weren't committed, she answered, listening to the 911 operator confirm the open line and location. They were probing. Tonight that the goal was to scare and test. They got scared instead. She spoke up to the phone, crisp and clear. Break-in attempt, 4 suspects, fled in a pickup, no plate visible. Power appears cut at curb. Send a unit and notify the utility. Copy, the operator said. Deputy en route, utility notified. We waited with the dead quiet house until blue strobes washed the front windows. A deputy took our statements while a utility tech opened the curb panel and whistled low. Manual throw, he said, shining a beam over scraped metal. Somebody popped this with a tool, not random. After they left, the refrigerator kicked back to life and the hall light glowed like a candle relit. The clock on the stove blinked 12 on at us, brand new and blank. Maya stood at the window a long moment, then turned to me, voice softer now that the adrenaline had ebbed. We can't rely on the doorbell or patrol dash cams. They've already proven they can wipe or sidestep both. I nodded. So, what do we trust? Our own eyes, off-grid. She tapped the pocket where she kept the car fob, the improvised siren. Battery-backed lights, independent recorders. Tomorrow, we harden the house. I pictured the 4 shadows peeling off into the night, a porch they thought would be easy, the horn they didn't expect. The fear in my chest had cooled into something steadier. Tomorrow, I said, we put cameras everywhere. Not everywhere, she answered, a ghost of a smile returning. Just where they'll step first. Upstairs, the house resumed its ordinary sounds, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the hallway clock, the distant slosh of the lake against the rocks. But the ordinary felt different now. It felt chosen. We went back to bed, not to sleep so much as to wait for the sun. In the gray just before dawn, Maya's hand found mine on the quilt. This isn't harassment anymore, she said. It's attempted entry. And tomorrow, I said, already seeing cable runs and brackets in my head, we start the paper trail they can't erase. She didn't answer, but I felt her nod in the dark. The night Travis and his crew backed off should have brought relief. Instead, the silence that followed was the kind that lets you hear your own heartbeat. I didn't sleep much. I lay there staring at the faint glow of Maya's duty radio on the nightstand. Green light blinking every few seconds like a watchful eye. She slept on her side, one arm draped over the quilt, the other close enough to reach the radio if it buzzed. I wondered how many nights she had slept this way, half a wife, half a sheriff, while I had no idea. By Saturday morning, the rain had cleared, leaving the air smelling of wet pine. I brewed coffee out of habit, but my hands shook while pouring the mugs. Maya came into the kitchen in her gray sheriff's office t-shirt, hair still damp from a quick shower. She looked rested, but her eyes had that distant focus I'd noticed the night before, the look of somebody already running tactical scenarios in her head. "We need cameras up by tonight," she said matter-of-factly, as if she were asking me to change a light bulb. I raised an eyebrow. "We? Or the sheriff's office?" "We," she repeated. "I'm off duty today. I want your help mounting 2 outside and 1 inside by the front door." That was the first time I realized she had already bought the cameras, 3 small black cubes still in their packaging on the table. She'd planned for this long before Travis ever pounded on our door. By mid-afternoon, we'd finished the installation. 1 camera hid in the branches of the maple tree facing the street, another tucked beneath the eaves over the garage. The third sat high on the entryway wall. The feed streamed to her encrypted tablet. As evening settled in, Maya sat at the dining room table, reviewing the footage on fast forward. Cars, dog walkers, a kid delivering flyers, nothing unusual. Yet the tension in the room didn't lift. Around 8:30, a subtle crackle from the duty radio broke the quiet. 225 Sierra, you copy? Patrol 26 just flagged a suspicious pickup cruising your block. Black F-150, no front plate. Maya answered in a calm tone that contrasted the sharpness in her eyes. "Copy that, dispatch. Keep eyes on it. I'm at residence with visual on street." I walked to the window and peered out through the curtains. A set of headlights had just rolled slowly past our driveway, then disappeared around the corner. "It's them, isn't it?" I asked. "Probably just a drive-by check," she said, but her fingers never left the radio. Sunday morning brought sunshine, neighbors walking dogs as if nothing had happened. Still, whispers followed me when I went to pick up the newspaper. The story of Travis's late-night stunt was already making the rounds. People nodded politely, but with that look, half curious, half cautious, like they weren't sure whether to pity us or avoid us. Maya kept to herself most of the day, typing notes on her tablet, cross-checking something on her phone. I tried to work on a client project but couldn't keep my eyes off the street. By afternoon, I finally asked, "You're logging a case, aren't you?" She nodded. "Paper trail. Everything Travis has done, date, time, witnesses. If he escalates again, we'll have it on record." Her composure was steady, but I caught the fatigue around her eyes. The strain of protecting a town while trying to live like an ordinary neighbor was starting to show. That evening, we decided to take a walk around the loop, something we hadn't done since the first incident. The October sky had turned gold and lavender at sunset, leaves crunching under our shoes. For a few minutes, it almost felt like the neighborhood we had moved into a year ago, quiet, friendly, safe. Halfway down the block, we spotted Mrs. Jenkins standing by her mailbox, phone in hand. She gave us a small wave, and when Maya greeted her, lowered her voice. "I don't want trouble, but I heard Travis held another HOA security briefing in his garage last night. Said something about you two hiding county equipment at your place." Maya thanked her calmly, promised everything was under control. The moment we turned the corner, though, her jaw tightened. "They're seeding the rumor," she said. "Classic tactic. Create suspicion before you make your next move." Later that night, just as we were locking up, the motion alert pinged on her tablet. The street camera feed showed a figure pacing near the far end of the cul-de-sac, hood pulled up, face hidden in shadow, hands moving, as if speaking into a handheld device. Maya tapped the radio. "Dispatch, 225 Sierra. Possible surveillance on my block, north end by the Maple. Send unit for a slow roll-by." Her voice was even, but her hand rested near the holstered sidearm at her hip. The figure slipped out of view before the patrol car arrived. When we finally went upstairs, I paused by the window. The maple leaves outside stirred in the breeze, shadows shifting under the streetlight. I couldn't tell whether the quiet was real or just a pause before something worse. Maya came to stand beside me, coffee mug warming her hands. "You don't have to be scared," she said softly. "I'm not scared," I answered, though my throat felt tight. I just don't like feeling like prey in my own home. She gave a faint smile. Then we make sure we're never prey. Let them make the next mistake. I nodded, but kept watching the dark street below. I had a feeling that next mistake wasn't far off. The next few days passed with a strange, brittle calm. No late-night pounding on the door, no prowling trucks, but the quiet felt staged, like the silence before a courtroom verdict. Maya spent her evenings at the dining room table with a legal pad and her county laptop open beside the encrypted tablet. Every so often I'd hear the faint click of her pen as she jotted a note, or the static hiss of her duty radio when dispatch called out routine traffic stops across the county. I learned to tell, by the way she tilted her head, which transmissions were worth her attention and which she let slide. One night, I brought her a fresh mug of coffee and asked the question that had been burning in me since the break-in attempt. "You're planning something, aren't you?" She didn't look up right away. "Planning? No. Preparing? Yes." She flipped the pad around so I could read the header she'd written in block letters. "O.P. Mallard, Evidence Gathering Strategy." "Mallard?" I asked. "A decoy bird," she said, lips curling in a faint grin. "You make it look vulnerable so the hunter takes the shot. Travis thinks he's running the game. We'll give him a chance to prove it." That weekend, she quietly upgraded our porch camera to a dual-angle lens with infrared and mounted a motion-activated mic near the garage light. She added a sticker that read, "Video surveillance in use," then winked at me. "A sign won't stop them," I said. "Exactly," she replied. "If they ignore the warning, it tells us what we need to know in court." She also installed a dummy lockbox in the basement, an empty steel case with a shiny combination dial. She set it where Travis's crew could see it if they ever got inside again. It was pure bait. On Monday evening, after most neighbors had turned in, we sat in the living room, the glow from the tablet casting her face in pale light. She rewound a clip from earlier that afternoon. Travis's black F-150 creeping past our driveway, slowing, then rolling on. "He's checking to see if we've dropped our guard," she murmured. "Good, let him think we're predictable." I shifted uneasily on the couch. "Maya, I'm all for catching them, but you're drawing them back to the house. Isn't that dangerous?" "It is," she admitted. "That's why we'll control the timing." Her calm tone both reassured and unsettled me. This was the same woman who used to laugh at cheesy cooking show bloopers. Now she sounded like a field officer setting an ambush. On Tuesday, just after sunset, a neighbor's teen, Logan, came knocking, eyes wide. "Mr. Carter, there's some guys by the HOA shed behind the pool house. They've got flashlights. I think one's Travis." Maya stepped to the porch before I could even respond. "Thanks, Logan. Head on home. We'll handle it." She waited until the boy's bike disappeared down the sidewalk, then unclipped her radio from her belt and pressed the side button. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff 225 Sierra. Confirm my ID. I've got possible trespassers near the HOA maintenance shed by Lakeview Pool. Request a quiet unit, no sirens." The answer came back after a beat of static. "Copy, 225 Sierra, identity confirmed. Unit 12 en route, lights only." I'd heard her use the call sign before on routine county traffic, but hearing her deploy it in our own neighborhood sent a cold shiver up my neck. The voice that answered wasn't my wife's, it was the sheriff. We drove separately, she in her unmarked county Explorer, me trailing in my sedan at her insistence. She told me to stay 2 houses back and keep my phone recording. When we reached the cul-de-sac by the pool, the men were gone, only wet footprints on the concrete path, fresh mud on the shed's padlock. Maya crouched, clicked a quick photo with her department phone, then stood. "They're scouting for a weak entry," she said. "They'll try again. We'll let them." Her voice carried that same measured certainty. No anger, no panic, just strategy. Back home, she spread a county map across the table, marking in red every camera angle and streetlight. I realized then how much of her world was built on perimeter lines and blind spots. I helped her label each camera feed and synced my phone to her secure cloud. Before bed, she said, almost as an afterthought, "Ethan, tomorrow leave the basement window slightly unlatched, just enough for someone to think they've found an oversight." I stared at her. "You're serious?" "If they believe they've discovered a weakness," she repeated, "they'll rush it, and that's when we'll have them on tape." That night, neither of us slept much. I lay listening to the soft hiss and click of her duty radio on the nightstand, the occasional burst of static as other deputies reported routine traffic stops miles away. Every time the radio cracked alive, I felt my pulse jump. Sometime past 2 a.m., while the house was still and the street outside silent, Maya's hand slid across the quilt to rest on mine. "We'll get through this," she said softly. "But tomorrow, don't be surprised if the quiet finally breaks." I squeezed her hand, but said nothing. The night felt heavy, loaded with the weight of whatever trap we'd set in motion. The following night arrived with that heavy stillness only October can bring. Air damp and cool, the moon veiled behind thin clouds that made the streetlights glow like halos. We'd gone to bed early, hoping rest might come before the next storm. I left the basement window unlatched, just as Maya had asked. That tiny defiance against common sense made my stomach twist, like leaving the front door open on purpose. Around 12:47 a.m., I woke to the faintest creak, the kind you feel in your spine before you fully hear it. I lay still, ears straining. Then came the clink scrape of a metal latch, followed by a hushed thud from somewhere below. Maya's eyes were already open. She reached over, clicked off the nightstand lamp, and slid her hand to the duty radio. Her voice dropped into the crisp tone I now recognized as pure sheriff. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff 225 Sierra. Confirm my ID." A crackle of static answered, then the dispatcher's calm voice. "225 Sierra, confirmed. Go ahead. I've got 4 armed impersonators at my residence. Basement entry point. Request immediate units. Silent approach. Advise units, this is in progress." The exchange lasted less than 10 seconds, yet I swear I could feel each syllable land like a hammer blow. We moved quietly downstairs, Maya leading, service pistol drawn, me a few steps behind with my phone recording. The living room was a pool of shifting shadows from the streetlight outside. On the tablet screen mounted near the entryway, the porch camera feed showed nothing but our wet driveway. Clear. But when Maya tapped the arrow to switch to the basement cam, we both froze. 4 shapes inside. One crouched near the fake lockbox we'd planted that morning. The others hovered behind, faces half hidden under hoods. One of them carried what looked like a pry bar. Another had a baton slung through a belt loop. Maya's eyes stayed locked on the screen as she keyed the mic again. 225 Sierra to responding units. Suspects are inside, basement level, 3 male, 1 female, possibly armed with blunt objects. I'll hold top of stairs until you arrive. Advise when you're 2 minutes out. The camera's night vision glow made the intruders look ghost pale. I recognized the tallest immediately, Travis Cole, his shaved head and square shoulders impossible to mistake. He was prying at the dummy box with the stubborn focus of a man sure he was about to find treasure. I whispered, "They're falling for it." Maya didn't answer. Her breathing was slow and measured, her stance rigid but controlled. Even in that dim light, I could see the small shift of her weight, ready to react. From outside came the faint hum of a vehicle slowing without sirens. Her radio whispered, "Unit 12, 2 minutes out. Approaching dark." Maya clicked back. "Copy. I'm stationary at the stairwell landing." Then we waited, those 2 minutes stretching like hours. Through the thin floorboards we heard a muffled curse, then the metallic clang of the dummy box resisting Travis's efforts. A sudden sharp crack startled me. One of the intruders had stepped wrong, snapping an old paint stir stick left near the wall. Travis hissed at him to stay quiet. The sound shouldn't have been funny, but in that charged silence, it felt surreal, like watching a stage play where the villain flubs his line. The glow of headlights swept briefly across the side window, Unit 12 sliding to a silent stomp at the curb. Maya raised 2 fingers to me, a signal to stay put, then keyed the mic one last time. "Dispatch, 225 Sierra. Visual confirmation of backup. We're moving." I'll never forget what happened next. Maya stepped forward to the top of the basement stairs, braced 1 foot on the landing, weapon lowered but ready. Her voice rang out, firm, official, no trace of fear. "This is Sheriff Maya Carter, County Sheriff's Office. Drop everything and keep your hands where I can see them." The reaction was almost cinematic. All 4 froze mid-motion, as if the word sheriff had sucked the air out of the basement. The smallest of the men, the one with the baton, actually stammered, She's the sheriff?" From outside came the authoritative shout of the arriving deputy. "Sheriff's office! Basement suspects! Keep your hands visible!" The next moments blurred, boots on the porch, a deputy sweeping in through the kitchen door, another covering the back entrance. The imposters were ordered up the stairs one by one, hands raised, Travis last. his glare fixed on Maya as if sheer hatred might burn her down. Seeing them march out under real law enforcement command was like watching a fever break. When the cuffs clicked on Travis's wrists, Maya finally lowered her weapon. She exhaled, shoulders easing, but her eyes stayed on him until the patrol car doors shut. I remember standing there beside her on the porch, the blue-red patrol lights washing over our faces, and realizing just how much of my wife I'd never really known until that night. The deputies took statements until nearly 3 in the morning. When the last cruiser pulled away, Maya and I sat in the quiet living room, the tablet still showing the frozen image of Travis at the dummy lockbox, his expression halfway between greed and shock. Maya sipped the cold coffee left on the table and finally said, almost to herself, "That was just their opening move. Whoever's behind Travis won't like losing pawns." I didn't answer. The night had proven her right about everything, and I had the uneasy feeling that the real battle was still ahead of us. Morning sunlight streamed through the blinds as if nothing had happened the night before, but the living room still smelled faintly of wet boots and coffee gone cold. Our front porch was littered with footprints and a forgotten evidence marker. For the first time in weeks, the cul-de-sac was utterly still. No barking dogs, no sprinklers ticking, just the hush that follows a storm. Maya was already at the dining room table, hair pulled back, badge clipped to her belt. Her phone was on speaker with Detective Ron Harkins, the department's evidence specialist. "We processed your basement overnight," Harkins said. "No forced entry damage. Window was cracked open like you said. Prints on the dummy lockbox matched Travis Cole and 2 of his buddies, Jeff Bain and Kyle Turner. The 4th one, the woman, we're still running. Name she gave us looks fake." Maya jotted notes while I refilled our mugs. "And the weapons?" she asked. 2 expandable batons, a pry bar, and, get this, one of those cheap nylon HOA enforcement vests. Looks like they bought a dozen off the internet. I could hear the paper shuffle on his end, then a sigh. "We also pulled a burner radio, different frequency than ours, civilian band. We'll try to see if it ties to anybody else." After the call, Maya leaned back, pinching the bridge of her nose. They came ready to intimidate, not ready to shoot. Still, the coordination worries me. Somebody gave them that idea and probably promised backup. "Think Travis has a boss?" I asked. "Almost certainly," she said. "Travis is a bully, but not smart enough to scrub dispatch logs or wipe camera footage. That takes someone on the inside." By mid-morning, 2 county cruisers returned with paperwork for a search warrant on Travis's garage and HOA office locker. The neighbors peeked through curtains as deputies carried out boxes of files and a battered desktop computer. From our porch, I caught sight of Linda Shaw, the HOA treasurer, usually cheerful, now pale as chalk, watching from her driveway. When our eyes met, she looked away quickly and went inside. Something told me Linda knew more than she was willing to admit. At noon, we headed downtown for formal statements. The sheriff's substation smelled of fresh coffee and printer ink, a strangely normal contrast to the tension in the interview room. Detective Harkins spread photographs across the table, close-ups of the fake vests, the pry bar, screenshots from our basement cam. "We're charging Travis with attempted burglary, criminal impersonation, conspiracy. The DA's adding unlawful restraint and trespass with intent to intimidate." He tapped the photo of the woman, still digging on her. "She calls herself Cora Reeves, says she's Travis's security consultant." Maya exchanged a look with him that I couldn't quite read, half skepticism, half calculation. "Check DMV and court records in Nevada and Arizona," she suggested. Something about her posture screamed ex-loss prevention, maybe private contract muscle. Harkins nodded and made a note. That evening back home, we sat on the porch swing, watching the sky turn violet over the lake. For a few minutes, the quiet felt almost peaceful, until my phone buzzed with a news alert. HOA president and 3 others arrested in late-night break-in. The article showed a grainy booking photo of Travis, eyes red-rimmed, jaw clenched, and quoted an unnamed neighbor describing me as a troublemaking homeowner stirring things up. I lowered the phone, muttering, "They're already spinning it." Maya gave a short, humorless laugh. "Of course they are. That's why we document everything. Facts outlast gossip." Just before dark, we heard slow footsteps on the gravel path. Linda Shaw appeared at the edge of the porch light, clutching a folder to her chest. "Sheriff Carter, Mr. Carter, can I talk to you a minute?" Her voice trembled. Maya invited her up. Linda perched on the wicker chair as if ready to bolt. I think I made a mistake, she whispered. Travis said the board needed certain member files for an audit, financial statements, veterans' property exemptions. I handed them over without thinking. After last night, I realized he might have been using them for something else. I'm so sorry. Maya's expression softened, but stayed professional. You did the right thing coming forward. I'll need a written statement and a list of every file you gave him. Linda nodded, eyes shiny with guilt. The folder in her hands turned out to be photocopies of HOA expense ledgers, payments to a so-called community safety consultant company we'd never heard of. After Linda left, Maya flipped through the pages under the porch light. These payments started 3 months ago, right after Travis became president. The amounts go up every week. And here's a signature for equipment rentals. My guess, radios, uniforms, maybe even surveillance tools. She closed the folder with a decisive snap. Tomorrow I'll have Harkins subpoena the bank records. If the money trail lines up, we'll know who's pulling their strings. Later, as we locked up for the night, Maya paused at the front door and looked out at the cul-de-sac. Ethan, she said quietly, the arrests don't end this. Somebody paid for those men, scrubbed those logs, told them what to look for in our basement. Until we know who that somebody is, stay alert. Her words settled over me like the damp autumn air. Cool, heavy, undeniable. The worst part wasn't that she might be right. It was that I believed her completely. The day after Travis's arrest felt like the eye of a hurricane. Bright skies, crisp autumn air, yet every neighbor on our cul-de-sac carried the same stiff politeness, the way people act when they're trying to pretend nothing happened. Maya didn't share their optimism. By sunrise, she was on the phone with Detective Harkins, coordinating the warrant to dig deeper into the HOA's financials. I caught pieces of the conversation while buttering toast. Yes, Ron, start with the bank that handles the dues account. Pull every transfer to that so-called community safety consultant company, the one Linda flagged. I want invoices, check memos, everything since July. I couldn't help blurting, you think the whole HOA board's in on it? Maya covered the mouthpiece and gave me a look. Maybe not all, but somebody higher than Travis gave the green light. By mid-morning, we met Harkins at the substation's small conference room. He had the kind of grin that meant he'd struck gold. Spread across the table were photocopies of checks, ledger pages, and email printouts. One memo leapt out at me. Payment, September 12th. Heritage Neighborhood Risk Solutions. Forthsers, Security Asset Leasing. Harkins tapped the sheet. Turns out that Risk Solutions LLC is nothing but a P.O. box in Phoenix. No business license, no staff. The same shell company shows up in 3 other towns where HOAs got caught running shady compliance patrols. Maya flipped through another folder, frowning. They were funneling HOA dues into a ghost account, paying for the uniforms, radios, probably even Travis's stipend. I asked, so the neighbors basically funded the thugs who broke into our basement? Harkins nodded grimly. That's the picture. The next puzzle piece came from a seized burner radio found on Cora Reeves, the woman who had claimed to be a consultant. County techs matched its frequency to a privately licensed band used by Bridgemark Security Logistics, a regional contractor whose CEO just happened to be the brother-in-law of our HOA's attorney. It was Maya's turn to whistle low. Now we're talking about a supply pipeline, gear from Bridgemark, money through the shell company, muscle recruited by Travis. Late that afternoon, we invited Linda Shaw back over. She arrived carrying another folder and a Tupperware of banana bread, an uneasy peace offering. Seated at the dining room table, she confessed in a shaking voice. Travis told the board that the county was cutting patrol coverage near the lake. He said we had to fund our own security detail, or insurance rates would jump. I signed the checks. I thought it was legitimate. Maya kept her tone measured but firm. Linda, you and I both know the county never issued that warning. We'll need you to testify that Travis presented the invoices as official business. Linda nodded, eyes brimming. I will. I feel awful. Neighbors trusted me. That night, the 3 of us sat in our living room, with ledgers spread across the coffee table. Maya highlighted dates. Linda pointed out initials that matched other board members. I read off routing numbers. Piece by piece, the conspiracy took shape. July. Travis elected HOA president. August, shell company. Heritage Risk Solutions begins billing for community security assets. September, Bridgemark Logistics supplies radios and equipment. October, Travis's enforcement team starts late-night patrols, culminating in the break-in at our house. Near 10 p.m., as Linda gathered her things to leave, the motion alert pinged on Maya's tablet. The street camera feed showed a white SUV idling by the mailbox cluster. Lights off, windows tinted too dark to see inside. Maya watched for a long moment before speaking quietly into the radio. Dispatch, 225 Sierra. Plate check, white SUV, no lights, parked on Lakeview Court near the mailboxes. Static. Then the dispatcher's reply. 225 Sierra, plate unreadable on camera, Unit 10 rerouting for visual. The SUV rolled off before the patrol car arrived. Maya muttered, "They're testing response times. This isn't over." The following morning, Harkins texted, "Search of Bridgemark office revealed rental contracts for 2 more HOAs in the county. Same pattern. Sending copies." Maya stared at the text and said to me, "It's bigger than Travis. We're looking at a business model. Sell fear to boards, skim the dues, keep everyone quiet with intimidation." Her calmness carried a weight that made me grip my coffee mug tighter. That evening we went for a cautious walk around the block. Leaves crunched underfoot. Porch pumpkins smiled their carved grins. Most neighbors averted their eyes or waved stiffly. Halfway back home, old Mr. Grant, a Vietnam vet who lived 2 doors down, called from his porch. "Sheriff Carter, glad you got those hooligans last night, but watch your 6. Folks like that never act alone." Maya thanked him with a nod. The warning lingered with me the rest of the walk. Back inside, I asked the question I'd been avoiding all day. "How far up do you think this goes?" Maya set her jacket on the chair and looked at me steadily. "If shell companies and security contractors are involved, it's crossing county lines, maybe state. The next step is federal." I felt a chill despite the warm room. We'd started with nosy HOA complaints about our fence, and uncovered what looked like organized racketeering. Just before bed, she typed up a preliminary case brief for the DA's office and paused to glance at me over the laptop screen. "Ethan, brace yourself. Once we push this upward, they'll fight back. Lawsuits, smear campaigns, maybe worse." I thought of the SUV by the mailboxes, the wiped camera footage, the way Travis had glared at her, even in handcuffs. I believed every word. If there's one thing I've learned from living with Maya, it's that she doesn't wait for trouble to knock. She goes out and meets it halfway. 2 days after we pieced together the shell company scheme, she and Detective Harkins were already drawing battle lines. They met in our dining room at 8 in the morning. I played host, setting out a pot of coffee while they spread maps, ledgers, and a printout of Bridgemark's client list across the table. "We can't just arrest a company," Harkins said, stabbing a finger at the spreadsheet. "We need to catch them operating. Money in, muscle out." Maya nodded. "We bait them with what they want, more business. If we set up a false community ready to hire their services, we can follow the money straight to the accounts." She looked at me then, as if measuring whether to tell me the next part. "Ethan, I want you to play the role of a new HOA board president, someone willing to sign a trial security contract. They won't suspect you." I nearly dropped my coffee spoon. "You want me to be the bait? Maya, I'm not a cop." "You're not supposed to be," she said gently. "That's why it works." By noon, Harkins had arranged for a vacant lakeside duplex, county-owned and perfect for staging a fake HOA office. Maya drafted a brief letter of intent using a fictitious HOA name, Lakeview Bluffs Home Association. I asked her, "Isn't this entrapment?" Harkins chuckled. "Nope, we're not persuading them to do anything illegal. We're just giving them the stage to do what they already do." That evening we rehearsed my cover story. I was to pose as Ethan Blake, a retired contractor recently elected HOA president of Lakeview Bluffs, worried about break-ins and eager to try a private security option. Maya coached me on how Travis had pitched the program to our real HOA, same buzzwords, same questions. I couldn't help but laugh nervously. "I sound like the world's most gullible neighbor." Maya smiled. "Exactly the point." 2 days later, I sat in the stage duplex's front office, wearing khakis and a windbreaker, a borrowed HOA name tag pinned to my shirt. A discreet lapel mic hid under my collar, linked to the county's surveillance van parked half a block away. At precisely 3 p.m., a black SUV pulled up. Cora Reeves stepped out first, her leather jacket zipped to the chin, followed by a clean-cut man carrying a slim briefcase. Maya's voice came soft and steady through the tiny earpiece they'd given me. "Stay calm, Ethan. That's Bridgemark's regional rep, Daniel Firth. Just follow the script." Inside, Cora introduced herself as Security Operations Consultant. Firth did most of the talking, smooth, polite, with that salesman's ease that made you want to nod along. "We specialize in neighborhood compliance and deterrence patrols," he said, sliding a glossy pamphlet toward me. "First month is discounted if you sign today." I flipped through the pamphlet, pretending to study the pictures of uniformed guards and patrol SUVs. "What about uncooperative residents?" I asked, careful to sound naive. Firth gave a practiced smile. "Our team has experience in de-escalation and, when necessary, enforcement of HOA regulations. Sometimes a visible presence solves problems before they start." From the van, Harkins whispered in my earpiece, "That's our keyword, enforcement. Keep him talking." I leaned back in my chair, acting reluctant. "I'm not sure the board will approve. Could we start small, say, weekend night patrols?" Cora jumped in quickly. "Of course. We could even arrange a test operation. Let your residents see results. You'd be surprised how effective a uniform and a radio can be." I almost winced at how close she came to bragging. As they outlined the contract, Firth mentioned the preferred payment method. "We usually run funds through Heritage Neighborhood Risk Solutions, streamlines HOA compliance." I shot a look at the pamphlet, pretending confusion. "So, the invoice comes from Heritage, not Bridgemark?" "Exactly," Firth said. "Keeps it simple for the association's books." In the van, I heard the low whoop of Harkins's muffled cheer. They had just confirmed the money trail we needed. When the pair finally left, shaking my hand like we'd sealed a real deal, Maya and Harkins came in from the surveillance van grinning. "You were perfect," Maya said, patting my shoulder. "They pitched everything we suspected. Security assets, shell billing, even test operations." Harkins held up the signed preliminary proposal I'd pretended to accept. "And now, we've got a paper trail." That night at home, I couldn't shake the adrenaline buzz. Maya noticed and poured me a late coffee. "You did well," she said, "but don't relax yet. We'll need a second meeting to trigger the money transfer. Once that hits the Heritage account, we'll have grounds for federal fraud charges." I asked quietly, "You think they'll come after us if they find out?" Maya's eyes softened, but her answer was steady. "They already came after us. We just turned the lights on." The following afternoon, Bridgemark emailed Ethan Blake the full contract, complete with routing numbers, early payment discounts, and an optional clause for resident compliance interventions. The phrase made my stomach tighten. Maya drafted a reply setting up a wire transfer for the following Monday. The plan was simple. The FBI cyber fraud unit would intercept the transfer mid-route, freezing the shell company's account at the moment the funds landed. "Once the money hits and stops," Harkins said over the phone, "we'll knock on doors with federal warrants in hand." That weekend, we kept a low profile. Neighbors still whispered about the basement break-in. A few had started peeling the HOA enforcement stickers off their mailboxes. It felt like the whole community was holding its breath. Late Sunday night, Maya and I sat on the porch swing under a pale moon. The street was quiet except for the hum of crickets. She reached for my hand and squeezed gently. "Tomorrow decides how deep this rabbit hole goes," she said. "Once the wire hits, we'll see who tries to pull it out of the trap." I nodded, staring out at the calm street that suddenly felt more like a stage set than a neighborhood. We both knew dawn would bring more than another ordinary Monday. The Monday of the sting dawned too bright for how heavy my stomach felt. The lake shimmered under a soft gold sunrise that should have promised an ordinary week. But by 8:30, Maya's dining room command post looked like a mini field HQ, laptops open, radio charger humming, a thermos of strong coffee standing guard. I kept pacing between the window and the table while she double-checked the secure line with Detective Harkins and an FBI cyber fraud agent named Claire Whitman. "Transfer window opens at 9:05, Claire's voice crackled over the speakerphone. "Once the funds ping the Heritage account in Phoenix, we freeze it. Need your sheriff's dispatch, standing by for immediate arrest warrants." Maya replied with the crisp steadiness that always calmed me. 225 Sierra to all units. Stand by for go signal at 9:10. Suspects include Bridgemark Regional Rep and any HOA co-signers who appear to collect payment. I poured myself another cup of coffee I didn't need. At 9:04 a.m., sitting at the staged HOA laptop as Ethan Blake, I clicked the final submit button on the wire transfer. Eighth hunters from our Lakeview Bluffs HOA dummy account to Heritage Neighborhood Risk Solutions. The loading icon spun and spun before a green checkmark appeared. My heart thumped louder than the little ding that followed. Claire's voice came through the speaker. Wire confirmed, funds received in Heritage account, 3, 2, hold. A different voice cut in, male, calm, controlled. Cyber ops here, funds locked, account frozen. Target has attempted to reroute, block successful. Maya gave a tight nod toward me. That's our hook. 10 minutes later, an encrypted text landed on Maya's phone. Firth arriving at HOA office, ETA 12 Minur. Through the front window, I soon spotted the familiar black SUV gliding into the cul-de-sac. Firth stepped out, suit jacket buttoned, phone to his ear, his stride quick and purposeful. Cora Reeves followed, carrying a thin leather folio. I whispered, "He looks like he's coming to pick up a prize." "He's walking into the net," Maya murmured back. When they entered the duplex office, I greeted them in character as the cheerful HOA president. Firth was all smiles, until Maya, standing near the coffee machine in plain clothes, raised her badge. "Daniel Firth, by order of the county sheriff's office and in cooperation with federal authorities, you are under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. Step away from the desk." For a split second he froze as if the badge itself had stunned him. Cora's eyes went wide and her folio slipped from her fingers, scattering papers across the carpet. The next few minutes moved like clockwork. Harkins entered with 2 deputies from the side door. FBI agent Claire followed, already gloved to secure Firth's phone and briefcase. A second county unit escorted Cora out in handcuffs while she muttered under her breath. Through it all, Maya's voice stayed calm and professional, reading Miranda rights in that measured sheriff's cadence I'd heard only once before, during the basement arrest of Travis Cole. The real drama came when Harkins powered up Firth's laptop on site. Within seconds, the screen lit up with live transaction dashboards, routing numbers, payment histories, even lists of preferred HOA targets flagged by veteran-heavy neighborhoods. It was all there, laid out like a corporate playbook for intimidation. Claire let out a low whistle. "This is more than fraud. We've got evidence of coordinated interstate activity, money laundering, unlicensed private security operations, tax evasion, the works." Outside, curious neighbors gathered on sidewalks as 3 unmarked SUVs and 2 county cruisers idled under the oaks. A few filmed with their phones while deputies loaded boxes of seized electronics and files into the vehicles. For me, the most striking moment was watching Firth, so polished an hour earlier, now seated in the back of a cruiser, staring straight ahead, as if trying to compute how the ground had shifted beneath him. Back at our house that afternoon, the tension that had clung to the neighborhood for months finally began to crack. Mrs. Jenkins from next door brought over a plate of cookies as a silent peace offering. Mr. Grant, the Vietnam vet, tipped his cap at Maya with quiet respect, but Maya didn't linger in the warmth of relief. She stayed at the dining room table long after dark, typing her official incident summary for the Joint County Federal Task Force. "We're not done yet," she said, glancing up at me. "Firth will talk. He'll have to. Whoever funded Heritage will want to plug the leak fast, and that's when they make mistakes." Around 9 p.m., her duty radio hissed to life. 225 Sierra, this is dispatch. Phoenix Field Office confirms shell accounts tied to a regional developer's PAC. Suspected political kickbacks. Maya exhaled slowly, shoulders settling back. That's the layer we were missing. This wasn't just HOA greed. It's tied to real estate lobbying. I remember standing there in our quiet living room, thinking about how all of this started. A fence color dispute and a few lavender pots in our backyard, now unraveling into a scandal that reached across state lines. Later, as we finally shut the lights and headed upstairs, Maya paused halfway up the steps. The porch swing creaked in the night breeze outside, the same swing where we'd once planned summer barbecues. "Ethan," she said softly, "tomorrow I testify at the first bail hearing. After that, it's subpoenas and indictments. It'll get uglier before it gets better, but at least now we're pulling the roots out." For the first time in weeks, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. We hadn't just survived the trap, we'd sprung it on the people who built it. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper. one of those county buildings that had seen 100 small-town dramas play out beneath its tall windows. That Monday morning, though, the drama felt anything but small town. I sat on the left side behind the prosecution's table, trying to look composed while my pulse thudded in my ears. Maya stood at the far rail in her navy dress uniform, hat tucked under one arm, duty pistol locked away with court security. She looked every inch the sheriff. I still caught myself seeing the woman who read cookbooks in bed beside me. The defendant's bench was full. Travis Cole, broad-shouldered and scowling, Cora Reeves, pale and stiff in a tan jail jumpsuit, and Daniel Firth, the Bridgemark rep, suit traded for County Orange but still trying to wear the air of a businessman caught in a misunderstanding. Their attorney, a sharp-jawed man named Mills, leafed through a thick binder of motions. The hearing opened with Judge Eleanor Grayson, an older woman whose steady gaze could have frozen boiling water. She summarized the charges: conspiracy, impersonation of law enforcement, wire fraud, racketeering, unlawful surveillance, attempted burglary. The words alone sounded heavy. Hearing them stacked one after another had weight like iron chains. Assistant DA Mark Tolliver called his first witness, Sheriff Maya Carter. Maya stepped to the stand with calm that belied the flashbulbs from two local reporters. Tolliver started simply, "Sheriff Carter, explain how the defendants came under your attention." For the next 20 minutes, she laid out the timeline in that crisp, unhurried voice I'd first heard over the duty radio. Fence complaints, HOA harassment, basement break-in, discovery of the shell company, the sting operation. When she described the moment she'd radioed dispatch, "Dispatch, this is Sheriff 225 Sierra. Confirm my ID." The courtroom grew so still, I could hear the bailiff's pen scratching notes. Mills objected more than once, leading the witness. Speculative, but Judge Grayson overruled each, eyes never leaving Maya. Then came the video evidence. Tolliver dimmed the lights while a clerk rolled in a monitor. The basement cam footage played first. Travis and his crew crouched around the dummy lockbox, faces caught in ghost green night vision. The room stirred at the sight of their crude HOA enforcement vests. Next came the sting office recording, Firth calmly outlining the shell payment route, mentioning Heritage Neighborhood Risk Solutions as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When the lights came back up, even the reporters had stopped typing for a moment. Mills tried his best to shake Maya on cross-examination. "Sheriff Carter, isn't it true you set a trap by leaving a basement window unlatched?" "Yes," she answered evenly, "to gather evidence of a crime already in progress. You were hoping they'd commit a crime, weren't you? I was expecting it. The law allows decoy operations against repeat offenders." Each answer was measured, professional, no flash of temper, no wasted words. I felt a quiet swell of pride watching her hold her ground. The afternoon session brought in Linda Shaw, the HOA treasurer, who testified, voice trembling, how Travis had pressured the board into approving payments to the phantom security vendor. She admitted signing the checks under false pretenses and identified Travis's signature on reimbursement forms for equipment leasing. Finally, Tolliver called me. I swore in and told the court about the first pounding on our door, the fear, the look on Maya's face when she finally said, "Let me handle this." I described being the bait during the sting, pretending to be an eager HOA president, and how Firth explained the money trail himself. Mills objected a few more times, but my recorded conversation with Firth, played for the jury, left little room for argument. By the third day, the paper trail sealed the case. Bank subpoenas showed HOA dues routed through the shell company to Bridgemark accounts, with kickbacks to Travis's personal debit card. Federal agents testified about the frozen wire transfer and the seizure of laptops loaded with resident profiles. Judge Grayson denied bail for all three primary defendants, citing flight risk and ongoing investigation into broader interstate charges. Her gavel strike echoed like a final verdict, even though the trial proper was still ahead. When court recessed, neighbors who had once avoided us came over quietly to shake Maya's hand. Some apologized for doubting her. Others just looked relieved the nightmare had faces and names now. Outside on the courthouse steps, I stood beside her under a crisp autumn sky while reporters aimed microphones. "Sheriff Carter?" one asked. "What's your message to homeowners worried about HOA corruption?" Maya's reply was steady, simple. No homeowner should live in fear of their own neighborhood. The badge exists to protect, not to be imitated. If you see something wrong, speak up. Paper trails don't lie. Her words made the evening news unchanged. That night, back home on the porch swing, we listened to the crickets and the distant hum of the highway. Maya set her hat on the rail and leaned back with a sigh. "We won a round," she said quietly, "but the folks who built that shell network won't stop because 3 faces went to jail. The DA's pushing federal racketeering charges next." I squeezed her hand, feeling the cool autumn breeze sweep past us. For the first time in months, the street around our house felt like a real neighborhood again. Yet both of us knew the fight wasn't finished. Autumn came late that year, sliding into Oakwood Heights with gold-tipped leaves and cool evenings that smelled of wood smoke. For the first time in months, our cul-de-sac looked like the neighborhood we'd fallen in love with. Kids tossing footballs on front lawns, porch pumpkins glowing at dusk, neighbors waving instead of staring. Maya and I sat on the porch swing that had survived every storm and every sleepless night. She'd just finished a 12-hour shift at the sheriff's office, but insisted on walking the street one last time before dark, greeting folks as if to remind them their sheriff wasn't a headline on the news. She was still their neighbor. The trial of Travis Cole, Cora Reeves, and Daniel Firth had lasted most of the summer. All 3 were convicted: racketeering, fraud, impersonating law enforcement, and a list of lesser charges that still added up to decades behind bars. The jury needed less than 4 hours for deliberation. The evidence, videos, wire transfers, surveillance photos, spoke louder than any speech. Judge Grayson's sentencing remarks stuck with me. The trust of a community is not a tool to be rented or sold. When you corrupt it, you don't just steal money, you steal people's peace. Hearing that in the same courtroom, where Travis once smirked at us, felt like closure I hadn't known I was waiting for. The Oakwood Heights HOA was dissolved and reorganized under a court-appointed board. For the first time, residents voted in new officers, retirees, a teacher, a paramedic, ordinary neighbors with no taste for power games. Meetings moved to the community center instead of front lawns, budgets were posted online, and a simple rule was adopted by unanimous vote. No one may hold a security title without verifiable law enforcement credentials. Maya declined the invitation to chair the board. "I'm the county sheriff," she said at the microphone. "My job is to support you, not boss you around." The applause that followed was the kind that makes your throat tighten. In October, the county hosted Unity Day at the park. Food trucks, live bluegrass, kids' games. Maya gave a brief safety talk under the big white tent. How to spot fake authority, when to call 911, why community notes should never be ignored. She kept it short and light. Even joked about her first night in Oakwood when she couldn't get the fence gate open. By the end, people were laughing again, not whispering. I watched from the cider stand as kids lined up to take photos with her. No badge on display, just Maya in jeans and a ball cap, smiling as she knelt beside them. A little girl asked if she could learn the move that makes bad guys drop their gun. Maya promised to teach her the yell, run, tell drill instead. For the first time, I felt the street breathe easy. One afternoon in November, Detective Harris from the state task force stopped by. He handed Maya a slim black case. Inside was a commendation plaque recognizing her decisive actions during the sting. He also left us a flash drive, copies of the evidence for our records. "You two built a textbook case," he told us. "We're using it now to train other counties how to handle HOA exploitation schemes." We thanked him and, after he left, sat quietly watching the sunset through the porch rails. It felt strange realizing the nightmare we'd lived through would become someone else's lesson plan. Not everything healed overnight. A few neighbors still avoided eye contact, embarrassed they'd once sided with Travis. One family moved away altogether, not from fear, but from the shame of having believed his promises. But fences got mended, literally and figuratively. Our 6-foot iron fence, the spark of the whole feud, stayed exactly where it was, no longer a symbol of defiance, just part of the yard again. The county held a dedication ceremony for a new playground bench engraved with a line from Judge Grayson's verdict. "True security comes from trust, not intimidation." Seeing the inscription there made every sleepless night feel worthwhile. On quiet nights now, I sometimes replay the recording of Maya's calm voice over the radio. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff 225 Sierra. Confirm my ID. I've got 4 armed impersonators at my residence." That moment, clear, firm, unshaken, was when I realized my wife wasn't just the woman who brewed perfect coffee. She was the wall that wouldn't break. Neighbors sometimes ask how we got through it. The truth is, I don't think we did alone. It took good deputies, honest neighbors, one tough judge, and a sheriff who refused to blink when the porch light went on. The following spring, Maya started a free community awareness workshop at the rec center. The first class drew 20 residents. By summer, the crowd had doubled. She taught them what paperwork real officers carry, how to document suspicious encounters, how to recognize pressure tactics before they spiral. Don't be paranoid, she always said, but don't be passive either. I usually stood in the back near the coffee urn, watching her explain calmly, using our own story as both warning and reassurance. Seeing the faces of older couples, young parents, even a few college kids listening closely, reminded me why telling the story mattered. A year later, standing again on our porch as dusk settled over Oakwood Heights, I thought about how far we'd come. The air smelled of cut grass and barbecue smoke instead of tension. The street that once felt like a battleground now looked like a Norman Rockwell postcard. Maya joined me, carrying 2 mugs of tea. She handed me one, leaned on the rail, and said with that quiet certainty I'd learned to trust, "We're not done keeping watch, but tonight we rest." The porch light clicked on as the first fireflies blinked in the yard. For the first time in a long while, I believed her. If this story moved you or gave you something to think about, don't forget to tap that like button. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a neighborhood power struggle or seen someone stand up to a bully? And if you know friends or neighbors who'd enjoy a good true-to-life drama with a twist of justice, please share this story with them. Your support helps keep these stories alive.